Hey everybody, I'm Jack Reeder with Future Pastimes, and I am the designer of the Ecaz and Moritani expansion, which is the third expansion for the classic Dune board game, 2019 edition from Gale Force 9. And in this video, I want to talk about some unusual nuances that can happen because of some advantages that House Ecaz and House Moritani have. They both have unique ways of getting into an alliance outside of a nexus. And furthermore, Ecaz has their Occupy advantage, which can lead to some unusual situations. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of those so that you understand the possibilities, the powerful impacts that they can have on the game, and some crazy situations that you need to be aware of. So first, we'll start with talking about the ways that each of these factions can get into an alliance. So for Ecaz, they have their ambassador tokens, and one of them is the Ecaz ambassador. And what that does is gives Ecaz the ability to get Duke Vidal as a leader that they can use until he's used in a battle. And Duke Vidal is a 6-strength leader with no traitor card. However, when another faction moves into the stronghold that has the Ecaz ambassador, Ecaz can choose, instead of gaining Duke Vidal, they can offer to form an alliance with that faction. Now, neither Ecaz nor that other faction can already be in an alliance in order for them to do this. So they have to be available to ally, but they can offer that. And the player can decline. They can say, no, I don't want to do it. And there's no penalty for them if they do decline. But Ecaz will then gain Duke Vidal if they so choose. And if they do form an alliance, they can actually give Duke Vidal to that ally, which they will hold on to until he is used in a battle. So there's certainly incentives, and being able to form an alliance outside of a nexus is very powerful. You may have gone several turns waiting for Shai-Hulud, and it just hasn't been showing up in the Spice Blow and Nexus phase. But you are ready to get into an alliance, and this is a way for Ecaz to do that. Now, the Moritani, it's a slightly different story. Now, they have their terror tokens, which they are placing in strongholds at the end of a game turn. If a faction moves or ships into a stronghold that has a terror token, the Moritani player can, instead of revealing that token and triggering its effect, they can offer to form an alliance with that faction. And again, this is outside of a nexus. And this is called their enemy of my enemy advantage. And so now if that faction says no, then Moritani has to reveal and trigger the token. They can altogether choose not to trigger it and not form the alliance. But if they do say, I'm making this offer, the other player needs to understand that if they decline, the terror token will be triggered. Now, what's interesting about this effect is that both of these factions, Moritani and the other faction, can already be in alliances. And if they choose to form an alliance with each other using enemy of my enemy, they break their existing alliances with the other players, and now they are allied. So this can be extremely powerful, especially depending on turn order. If this happens late in the shipping and movement phase, other factions may not be in a position to prevent a win. So you have to pay close attention to which factions are going first and last in storm order, and where the terror tokens are and how many strongholds people are occupying. So if, for instance, let's say that the Emperor is allied with Atreides and they went for the win in the previous turn, but they didn't get there, and Atreides took the brunt of the losses. Well, the Emperor is saddled with this ally who has a lot of forces in the tanks and probably lost all their good treachery cards. So maybe they're thinking, you know what? I'm going late in the turn order, and if I go into the stronghold with the terror token, I could potentially get into an alliance with Moritani, which means I am out of my alliance with Atreides. And if I'm in 2 strongholds and Moritani's in 2 strongholds, well, maybe we just win the game on this turn. So you do have to pay close attention to that sort of thing because it has the potential to really shake things up. Now, the other advantage that can be germane to this discussion is the Ecaz Occupy advantage. So This is the advantage that lets them be in the same territory as their ally, which is normally you're not allowed to do that. And if they co-occupy 3 strongholds with their ally and can hold them till the end of the turn, then they can win the game. So they don't necessarily have to have 4 strongholds. If they are co-occupied in 3, that will win them the game. So you can get into an interesting situation where somebody may be allied with Ecaz, and then through enemy of my enemy, they break that alliance and join up with Moritani. And so that can be an interesting situation. Now, let's up the ante now, and let's talk about what happens if Ecaz is allied to Moritani, which can happen. It can happen through a normal nexus, so there's no restrictions there. They can get into an alliance that way. They can even get into an alliance using the Ecaz ambassador. What they cannot do is get into an alliance through enemy of my enemy. It specifically says when a faction other than Ecaz would trigger a terror token. So there's only so far that the Viscount Hundro Moritani will go, but he is not ready to get into an enemy of my enemy alliance with the Archduke of Ecaz. So there's still a possibility, though, that they are in an alliance. So the Nexus happened. They formed an alliance. It's now the shipping and movement phase. And let's say that Ecaz and Moritani are co-occupied. Let's say they're co-occupied in Tuixiche. And the Emperor was allied with Atreides, and things didn't go so well. And there's a terror token in Tuixiche, which maybe Moritani had placed there as a way to try to keep people from going in there. But the Emperor is going in, and Moritani is like, you know what? Why don't we form an alliance? I think I might have a better chance of winning with you than with Ecaz. Well, what happens there, if the Emperor goes for it, is the Emperor breaks their alliance with Atreides, and Ecaz breaks their alliance with Moritani, rather the other way around, in order to ally with each other. And this doesn't mean that Atreides and Ecaz get to ally. They don't. They are now on their own. But you have a situation now where you have Ecaz, Moritani, and the Emperor all in Tuixiche. Now, allies cannot be in the same territory with each other. So if Moritani has already gone in that turn, the Emperor has to move out of that territory. Otherwise, their forces will go to the tank. So that is an important thing to keep in mind. But let's say that Ecaz and Moritani were in an alliance, and it's been broken, and they were co-occupied everywhere. Well, now they're going to be in battles anywhere that they were co-occupied. So it's an interesting situation, and you've got some new experiences that can occur with one or both of these factions in the game, which I like, and it was by design. With Ecaz, I very much wanted to have a faction that could be in the same territories as their ally. It was the whole basis of the design idea for Ecaz, and I built everything else around that. And Moritani, it was all about terrorism. But I wanted to give Moritani some leverage. And so with the terrorism, you know, it's the threat of terrorism sometimes that gets you what you want, or at least that's what terrorists think. So the idea that you can put that token out there in order to lure somebody in order to form the alliance is, I think, very powerful. And the thing is that you can publicly talk about stuff. You can say, look, why don't you come into this stronghold where there's a terror token? In fact, you can make a binding deal. If you come into that stronghold, I will offer the enemy of my enemy alliance for you. Likewise, Ecaz can do the same thing. They can say, you know what, we're on a situation where none of us are allied, but I'm looking at the turn order here, and I see that Atreides is going to be going fairly early, and I would like to form an alliance with them. And in fact, I'm in Carthage as Ecaz, and I'm in Siege Tabor, for example. And if Atreides ships down into Carthage, and I have placed the ambassador for Ecaz in that stronghold, I can form the alliance with them. They can then move some of their forces into Tabor, where we are now co-occupied. And then on my turn, I can ship down into Habanya, where Atreides already is, and we are now co-occupied in 3 strongholds. And so suddenly, boom, they are in a very powerful position. And even if they get into battles, again, the Occupy advantage gives you a combat advantage, and it lets you control which one of you is going to be doing the fighting. So if Atreides is like, I've got a great hand of cards, so I'll do the fighting in all of those. I've got the Kwisatz Haderach. I've got the Prescience as well. And maybe you've given me Duke Vidal, so I've got an extra untraderable leader. That's a very potent mix there. That with the adding half of Ecaz's forces at full strength in advanced without needing spice, that is a very powerful ally indeed. So that is how this works. Let me know if you have any other questions or any other unusual situations that you foresee or have seen and want some insight or clarity or opinions on that. I'm happy to answer those. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.